So welcome, and we are thrilled to have you here. I have to be honest, in March of 2020, could not have imagined still being in a Zoom or Google Meet room for a back to school night. And yet we're here. And I also have to share that I went to my daughter's back to school night via Google Meet, and I was so happy that I didn't have to leave my house. So I don't really know where I am with this at this point. Part of me hopes that we might just keep it this way forever. I think the access we have to some moments like this may be more accessible for many people. So I am thrilled also to just meet many of you for another time. As all of you enter the upper school, I've gotten to meet you at some point. I joined my daughter's back to school night and thought, man, this teacher is so lucky. Like, she gets to spend all day with my kid. And I was mostly really happy that I still felt that way because it was a long summer. Now I kind of feel like I'm looking at you thinking, I feel so lucky that I get to spend all day with your kids because you have wonderful kids, and we are so happy to have each of them. Even in just these first few weeks of school, we feel connections are being made. Students are starting the hard work of learning and leaning into struggle and being supported in ways that may be feeling new to them, and they seem to be doing great. So we're going to just get started with our slide presentation. I do want to share that for parents and family members who might not be able to join this evening, we will be recording this and making it available. So that's just a info for those of you that are present, that will be recorded. Again, you do not have to keep your cameras on. Frankly, having the little box, I've presented both in webinar format and in just a meeting, and I so much more prefer having the chance to even see your picture or your name and know who is out there. So I appreciate you joining us in this way. If you joined our back to school night on September 1st, it was very different. I think we had 200 or 300 people there, and all I could see was this little number that said 280 or something. And if there's anything to make you worry when you're presenting, it's no faces and just this little number of how many people are watching you. So I believe Andrew Nimmer is going to share his screen.
Yes, I am.
Doing that, I'm actually just going to take a moment. I thinking I'm making this massive assumption that you even know who I am, and part of me thinks, man, if you don't know who I am, I have not done a very good job of doing what I do. And that would be a big problem. But I am Kate Collins. I'm the upper school division head. And with me tonight, I have Andrew Nimmer, the assistant division head.
Hello.
The upper school and 9th grade physics teacher. And Heather Ahern, the academic coordinator and an English teacher in the upper school. Hi, and you will have an opportunity to hear from both of them as well. While we have 16 adults who have not needed to join us tonight, they are aware that other teachers are aware that you're here, and we didn't want to kind of outnumber parents by bringing them all. So we will be sharing this back to school presentation on behalf of the larger teaching team. So Andrew, you can advance to the next slide, and we can just run through what we're going to be doing tonight. I'm going to spend a little time right now doing this quick welcome, and also quickly giving you an overview of the who's who and really what do we do in the upper school. And partly because at this point, I'm guessing at some point your child has come home with some story about school, something that's happening or a name, and sometimes just having the face of who that is, hearing what might be happening is nice. And Heather will lead us through a conversation or a presentation on our overview of our academic program, and Andrew will discuss student behavior and communication. So we can go to the next slide. So this here was my best attempt at representing who's who from a student perspective. this year we are 42 students in the upper school. While the color seems not important, it actually is. So what I have here is the red is indicating our 16 eighth graders who are all new to Carroll this year. Our ninth graders, there's 26 ninth graders. 12 of them were with us last year in Wayland for eighth grade. 9 came from the Lincoln campus eighth grade, and 5 are new to Carroll. So that makes up our 26 ninth graders. And most importantly, we are a one student community. Those students that were with us last year, I think, are immediately feeling that we are, as maybe strange as COVID is still lingering, there is much more that is feeling typical in our day. I have not actually experienced typical Carroll as I was new last year, but I can tell you from day one, it felt different this year, given that we were in one community, not in 3 pods, able to interact with the different, grades, are hanging out, socializing. If you've been at the pickup line, the 4 square games that are happening are pretty intense. For those of you that have students who are riding the bus on the way home, let me know. I can try to get a little video to send you, because there's some intense 4 square. I don't even play anymore because I'm nervous I'm going to get hurt. So
I think it feels really similar to a typical year to me. It looks different. We're all wearing masks, of course, and things like that, but we're pretty much able to do what we do so far. So it does feel pretty typical.
Yeah. That's good to know that it's not, if you were going to say, no, actually it's nothing like that, I would say, oh man, I'm worried for next year, I guess. So that's our student rundown. And, our students, I think, are blending really nicely. It does not feel like a grades divided. The friend groups are connecting across grade level, and it feels nice. The next slide, just a quick kind of who's who of our adults. Not the 3 adults that are here with you tonight. I had pictures of us, and frankly, I looked much better in my picture than I do in real life, and I just didn't want to confuse you. So these are the adults in our community, our Orton Gillingham tutors, the teachers who are leading your kids in classes, and then their all of their advisors. Many of you have met these people, or have met the advisor, of course, during the conference, and maybe have heard of who your student's tutor is. Here are the people, or the faces that represent and are those people. They are a wonderful group. I feel actually have moments where I don't know actually what I'm supposed to do, because they're so able. They're so self-motivated and driven and know exactly what to do by our students that frankly, my daughter actually asked, like, if they know what they're doing, why do they need you? So my 6-year-old asked, and I said to remind them that they know what they're doing. So they're a wonderful group, and they are thrilled to be working with your children. So that's the who's who, and the next slide is, and what do they do? Heather's going to get more into the academic program, and I was trying to think about academics is not all that we are doing. Of course, it is the guiding purpose of why your child is at Carroll, but there's so much more to the development of your child than their academic experience. We're thinking about their core values, who they are as a person, thinking about honesty and being accountable, being kind and inclusive, and having a seriousness of purpose as a student. So working with our students through our program to, for many students, kind of recreate their academic integrity, identity, who they are as students, who they are as a learner, to build that confidence, so that they're frankly willing and safe to take academic risk in their lives. So those core values are very directly tied to what our academic program and experience is. In some ways, a part of this little Venn diagram is the foundation of it all. I had a hard time coming up with a graphic that did this justice, but the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that we're doing, our commitment to social justice, is it's paramount to the work that we're doing at Carroll School. It is, as many of you heard me speak at the larger kind of back to school evening, now an equal part of our school mission. So we are thinking about this often. We are thinking about our curriculum and how are we working with students with LBLD, and also developing skills to have brave conversations, to think about their own identity, to think about how they exist in this world with people who are the same and different from them. And this is something that is interwoven across the curriculum, and something we're also continuing to strive to improve and to do better. I would say in DEI work, this is not a box to be checked off. Like, we did it, check off and move on. Carroll School and the Carroll adults are constantly thinking about this, working on being better, and thinking about how we are bringing this programming and mindset to our students as well. And that's incredibly important to us. To this year, our theme, and again, if you attended that other presentation, is perspective taking and human connection. And much of what we are doing socially with students during our community programming on Fridays is related to that school-wide theme, and that is across all three divisions. It's my hope that students are just annoyed by the concept of perspective taking by the end. I think if they are annoyed by hearing me or Heather or Andrew talk about that, then I think we did our job. Not so annoyed that they don't want to do anything with it, but annoyed that we have addressed it in so many times that it is really becomes automatic for them. Automaticity, you may hear your child's OG tutor talk about that. We are thinking about automaticity at Carroll in many different ways. At this point, Heather is going to kind of take over and dive more deeply into that center circle of our academic program. So I will pass it over to Heather.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. I'm just going to start with the next slide, if you don't mind. Thanks very much. So I'm sure some of you wonder just what your student's day looks like and what their week looks like. And just to give you an overview, every day starts with homeroom or advisory, where we check in with students about sort of what the schedule of the day is. On Mondays, we go over the schedule of the week. If there's anything unusual that comes up, we have them record that in their planner. We check in about homework completion from the night before, and if students need help, we help with finishing something, or if they need to reach out to teachers, we help them write emails and advocate for themselves and those kinds of things. So that's some of what happens in homeroom. And then we have a 6-block schedule that rotates throughout the day. So classes meet at different times during the day, which is great. That no one wants to have the class that meets after lunch every day. So we mix that up. And I'm sure for some of you, seeing flex on the schedule prompts a question. So Andrew, if you don't mind going to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about both flex and focus area. So I'm sure you've heard talk about giving every child what they need. And focus area and flex are a big part of that. Every child has a focus area that meets 9 out of 10 days in our cycle. And that is their schedule. They are scheduled in that focus area for the year, typically. And those focus areas could be Orton-Gillingham, which is oftentimes, a big reason that people are at Carroll School. So many of our students are in Orton-Gillingham focus areas. There's also language focus areas for students who aren't working on decoding and reading fluency. They may be in a language focus area to work on vocabulary or language comprehension or writing. And then we have other students whose greatest area of need is really a math focus area. And so they work in the math focus area. In addition to that, we have this flex block every day after lunch. And we assign students to 2 different flexes. So one meets for half the year and the other meets for the second half of the year. So students might do TCI, which is our targeted cognitive intervention program. Well, they all do TCI at one point or the other, and then they'll do one of these other things. This list is not the only thing that we offer. It doesn't mean that we offer these every single semester. It's really based on what the kids in front of us need. So we have students work on reading fluency and comprehension using a computer-based program called Reading Plus. They work on math skills, executive functioning, typing and computer skills, and there's a social pragmatic group that meets not every day, but once a week. Andrew, would you mind going to the next slide? Thank you. And the other thing that we think a lot about in terms of academic instruction is, well, we care about the content that your students are learning. So, they may come home and tell you something that they're learning in their history class, or talk about a fun physics lab that they've done, and all of those things matter. But it's the skills that we're teaching within that curriculum that we really focus on a lot. And these skills stretch across the curriculum. So we're looking at executive functioning skills and self-advocacy, language comprehension skills, expressive language skills, social pragmatic and social emotional skills, metacognition, and math skills and critical thinking. And more specifically, on the next slide, I broke these down slightly differently. So I don't have every category that I just mentioned. But for the categories of skills that we address, I gave some more concrete examples of how we're supporting these things. So in terms of executive functioning skills, in addition to having advisory and NCLU at the end of the day, where the advisor checks in with every student, teachers are checking to make sure that students have written in their homework in their planners in every class. We're checking to make sure that students are using their binders appropriately. They're putting their papers in their binders, not just shoving them in the backpacks. We work on goal setting daily in our planners, but also by the trimester. And you'll get to see some of those goals when you get our first up form, which I think Andrew's going to talk about in a little bit. We help students prioritize their assignments, so what they should do first, and that varies from student to student. What might work for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. So some students need to start with the easiest thing so they can get some traction and get going. Other students start with the hardest thing because they need to get that over and out of the way so that they can then move on to other things. I work on time management and metacognition. But in each of these categories, these things are done in all of our classes. So, reading comprehension is not limited to English classes. That is being worked on in history and science classes as well. And writing skills in particular are a big focus is in English, but we're also doing a lot of writing in the history class. Andrew, do you mind moving to the next? So I mentioned our digital planners. These digital planners are really helpful for students in terms of keeping track of their assignments, keeping track of appointments. I had a great conversation with a student today about not checking off assignments that aren't done and why we do check them off. I said, actually, when you check off an assignment, it feels pretty good. And she's actually decided to put like butterflies as her check mark. Other students use smiley faces and stuff. And it's a little reward. And I said, it's actually not that dissimilar from the little rewards that you get in, I'm sorry, but I call it stupid Snapchat. I can't really say it without the adjective there. Or in TikTok, right? Where you get like the little hearts floating up, or like if you have a streak in Snapchat that like you get little rewards. What they are, I have no idea. But I said those apps are all developed with the same neuroscience. which is that little reward. And I said, it may not be as awesome to put a check mark on your homework planner. It may not feel quite as good as getting 300 likes, but it is the same thing. And so it is developing habits, and it is a little reward. So hopefully I'll get to have that conversation with more students this year. We also work on sort of what is your after school plan. For a lot of our students, they have sort of time blindness, and they think like, I'll get to it later. They don't think about how much time it's going to take them to drive to and from basketball practice and when they're actually going to start their homework. So we have those conversations with them about like, okay, so you're going to drive home, you'll get home at like 5 o'clock, and then what are you going to do, and how long is that going to take, and did you consider breaks between your assignments? And then one of the other things that I really like about the planner is this opportunity for students to do a daily goal or intention. So every morning they think about, what is it that I'm going to focus on today? That obviously varies from student to student. And then at the end of the day in NCLU, they reflect on that and how they did. And it opens up great conversations between advisors and students. And it's a great way to build a lot of the goal setting and executive functioning skills I was talking about. I know, Andrew, you mind going to the next slide? Thanks. I know that homework has probably been awful for many of you. Not everyone. It is not your burden anymore. You shouldn't look like these parents in this cartoon. Do you mind going one more, Andrew? We recognize that many of you have had a lot of battles around homework, and we're going to take on a lot of that. Some students might come home and say to you, "You told us at Carroll that you are not supposed to be involved in our homework," and they use it as an opportunity to say, like, just stay out of my business, right? And that might work for some kids. Some kids might need you to just check in. Do you need time? But what we ask of parents mostly is that you make sure that your students have a consistent space where they can do their homework. We have 3 images here. The first one on the left is, a student doing their homework kind of in the kitchen. I like having students in a space where other people are. There's sort of a little bit of an accountability, even if you're not leaning over their shoulder and looking for accuracy in the work or thoroughness, just that they're actually doing their homework as opposed to being in their room with the door closed. On the computer, they could be watching YouTube videos, they could be on their phone, like, you don't know. So being in a common space where there's some oversight is a great thing. But it doesn't have to be. It also doesn't have to be a super fancy, they have their own home office. They just need a desk somewhere with good lighting and that's comfortable and with all the materials that they need in a place where they're not going to be highly distracted. We really strongly discourage kids from doing their homework in their bed or on the couch. So hopefully that will bring you some relief, that you won't have to be as involved in homework as maybe you have been in the past. We are also not saying that you're not allowed to check in with your students. And that's sometimes a question parents have for us who like, can I look at their planner? Of course you can look at their planner. But we do want to give parents a break and allow you to prioritize your relationship with your child. And sometimes the homework battle can really be a struggle and create conflict in your relationships. Andrew?
Yeah.
I think you are next.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Andrew, I was hoping to say, Andrew, you're muted, but you unmuted.
I beat you to it.
I haven't had to say it yet. I was waiting.
All right. Well, I'm still. We're using less meats, but I'm still somewhat practiced.
So we got it now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to juggle the presentation too, but it's all working out. Heather, I think Heather undersold. I just have to mention the planner. Heather undersold how much we nerd out on that homework planner and how many iterations. It's something we change every year, and we are just very dorkily proud of the homework planner, but it really works well. And anyways. So yeah, I'm going to talk about a few things, a little bit about our approach to student behavior, and then also just about communication with your children and also with you. And so anyways, it says on the left, we build positive, supportive relationships based on consistency, accountability, and appreciation for the student. So when there are times when students are struggling, and inevitably everyone makes mistakes, and those things happen, or says something they shouldn't say maybe. But a lot of our approach to supporting students around their behavior has to do with just creating a positive, supportive, inclusive, and accountable environment. The upper school is a place where the adults have lunch with the students. We play Foursquare at break. We chat when we have an extra minute or two in homeroom. We pass each other in the hallways constantly. So it's this very close community where we are together all the time. And we can really hold students accountable, but also kind of set an example for students in terms of kind of what we expect in terms of respect and positivity. And we have a great student culture. I love working at the upper school. I love being with the students. I think part of just the population of students that come to the upper school tend to, for the most part, appreciate being there. It doesn't always look like appreciation at times, but I really do feel lucky to be there and to be with all of the students. And I think we have a very positive vibe going. That said, there are some specific things we also do. So one of them is homeroom and NCLU, and I'll lump in after school study hall with that as well. Often when a student is having a hard time, it comes out of them feeling overwhelmed in some way. And quite often that feeling of being overwhelmed has to do with the schoolwork or maybe something social. But we have systems in place to very closely monitor and kind of just keep track of what's going on with your child. We have homeroom every day where we kind of touch base and talk about yesterday's work. And then at the end of each day, we have NCLU, which is homeroom again, but we like acronyms. So we call it NCLU, which stands for No Child Left Unorganized. And that's just another homeroom at the end of the day where we kind of, like Heather said, we use the planner and we set the plan. So those kind of two bookend touch points with your child are really important for the relationship between the advisor and the child, but also for just really making sure that they are moving in the correct direction, know what they need to do, have their plan, and are ready to go when they leave. We also, this is now just a plug, basically. We also have after school study hall, which is part of our extended day program. Not all students do it, but it's after school. It starts around 3:25 or so, and it goes till 4:45. And I would say most students don't really want to do it, to be honest, but many, if not almost all students, appreciate it in some way or are so happy to be there. For most students, so what it is a study hall where one of our teachers is in the room with students. It's kind of a smallish group of students, and the teacher checks in with them, reviews their homework planner, kind of makes sure that they have what they need, and kind of just gets them going on their homework, and they can kind of at their own pace do their homework, but in a quiet space that's really conducive to getting their work done. And then they have access to both the teacher in the room in that study hall. And then, of course, if they needed to go find another teacher who still might be in the building wrapping up, they can connect with another teacher. So that's just basically my plug for study hall. If you find yourself being interested, reach out to Mike Kometz or me, and I can send you in the right direction. But it's another example of ways that we can kind of preemptively support students so that they feel in control, they feel comfortable, they feel supported, they know what they need to do at school. Another time where we support students is during unstructured or less structured or unstructured time of the day, particularly before school, during break, during lunch, and then after school. We always have teachers present, kind of available and just kind of roaming. Sometimes we have kind of our own system of teachers are kind of assigned locations and things, but teachers tend to also just be where students are. It's this kind of beautiful building, but it's actually, there's not that many spaces in it. So we all are kind of in the same space together, and we're there and we are kind of setting the tone and making sure that students are feeling comfortable and feel good about where they are. That said, sometimes things don't go as planned, or a student kind of says something they shouldn't say or does something they shouldn't do. And we do have this system called the book. So the book is one of our kind of accountability systems. When a student, let's say, for example, they made a rude comment in class, or they had their phone out or something when they shouldn't have their phone, or they were on a different web page in class or something like that. Not that any of these things would ever happen, but they have. And so what the book is it's on the computer, and the teacher would say in a very neutral tone, can you please sign the book? And we have kind of previewed this with the students. They all know what it means. We've given them a presentation, and it's basically a place where they can kind of pause, reset. Basically every time they've done something that warrants signing the book, they're doing something publicly that the teacher has noticed. So it's not really a surprise that they would be asked to kind of be held accountable for that. And on that form, they just kind of write down a few words about what happened, who the teacher was that had them sign it, and then whether or not they would want a teacher to follow up with them. We've had a few students ask for a teacher to follow up, but very rarely does a student want the teacher to follow up. Quite often we still do follow up if we think it's in the student's best interest. And it's a kind of a chance for the student to pause and kind of take a break and then reset and re-engage with class, or go back to the basketball court, or whatever it may be in that situation. The book is, I also appreciate it as a teacher, because particularly when something's said that is not okay, it's essential for the adults to acknowledge it in some way, and particularly for other students that weren't involved to know that we see it, we are addressing it, and that we can act on it. So when a student signs the book a certain number of times, that's it. So when a student signs the book, they would type it and then move on. By the way, your child quite possibly will not sign the book at all, or once or something. If they only sign it once or twice, nothing happens. They signed it, they move on. Maybe we talk to them for a second, or maybe not. If a student is consistently signing the book, and I believe it's 5 times in the first trimester, and then for 9th graders, it's 4 and then 3, that would cause the advisor and probably some members of the teaching team to meet with that student, and just kind of discuss what's going on. And sometimes that would be, oh, I see that on October 10th, October 12th, October 13th, and October 19th, you signed the book for not paying attention or being rude in math class. And that's it. Every one of these is in math class. And then the question is very clearly with the student, like, what's going on in math class? Can we help you? What's happening? And then maybe the answer is, I'm sitting next to my friend and I'm just like, I keep goofing off and I know I shouldn't, but I'm sorry. And then it's like, we can solve that problem. We're just going to move the seats. Does that seem like a good solution? Moving on, something like that. It's not always that straightforward, but quite often these meetings are the student kind of doesn't feel great about it beforehand, but then leaves feeling heard, appreciated, valued, respected, and with a real plan to kind of address whatever was happening moving forward. I kind of hesitated how deep to go into this kind of behavior systems that we have, but I think it's important for you to kind of know how we think about things. And it's possible it will come up for your child, and they might come home and say, oh my God, I signed the book today in April or something. And so you kind of have some context for what it is. We are very sensitive to shaming kids, stigmatizing kids, making them feel called out or whatever it may be. We have settled upon this system as a way to address things as they happen in the moment, and then hold students accountable in a positive kind of restorative or productive way afterwards. So this system tends to work really well, and happy to share more. But the last thing on my list is just a team approach. We work the adults at Carroll work very closely together. And anytime there's kind of any student issue, when the student is finding challenge in whatever way, we are in it together as a team. We tend to call things, we use the phrase teaching team a lot. So there'll be kind of the 5 or 6 adults that student tends to interact with throughout the day. We are in constant collaboration with each other, and we really support each other. We communicate with each other, and we make sure that we all kind of are on board with the plan and can hold and follow through, and make sure that students are supported kind of throughout their day across all their classes and whatever settings they would be in. So this is kind of a hard transition. But I'm going to transition to a little bit about how we communicate. My son is in 2nd grade, so I am somewhat new to the world of zillions of emails and information coming from schools and sports teams and all those things. So I think that's made me slightly more aware in my job, but we do our best to keep information kind of streamlined to you, to get you the information that you need. Inevitably, sometimes I understand that there can be different sources of information. We want to make sure that you kind of are aware of those sources. But when you have questions for us, these are some places you can go. I'm actually going to start with the thing at the bottom. It says, you can't get this wrong. Anyone you contact at the upper school will connect you with the right person. So you can send an email to anyone, and that person may say, oh, actually, I'm going to connect you with Anne French or whoever it may be. But in general, if you have kind of attendance, transportation, general upper school questions, Anne French, our campus administrator, is a great person to start with. You can be in touch with me for kind of program events, at Carroll, programming, kind of the schedule, when things are happening, where people will be, etc. Academic questions or concerns are certainly probably something that would go first to the advisor, but Kate is also a person you can go directly to. Social emotional questions or concerns. Again, the advisor is a great first touch point for that. But Teresa Lax, our counselor, is a great resource. And then for placement questions, thinking about next schools, Kate Collins is your kind of primary go-to. When in doubt, on any kind of email, I would actually just send information or questions or whatever you have to the advisor. The advisor tends to be kind of your child's advisor is kind of the hub for that student, and then we'll make sure either we'll be able to answer the question directly or follow through on whatever needs to happen, or just kind of direct your questions or thoughts to whoever needs to know. Okay, so you also, in addition to this event where we kind of are summarizing generally what's going on at Carroll, we will be in touch with you, and we'll be communicating with you more specifically and just about your child. You have already experienced our first round of parent conferences. So parent conferences are, of course, a time for us to share with you. The first one, which you experience, tends to be different than the other three in that the first one is a lot about you sharing with us and you kind of telling us as much as you can about your child so that we can better support them. But then the subsequent three conferences are really us sharing with you. So we will be talking to you about your child's progress, our goals for them, what they're working on, what we see. So conferences are an important part of communication. And again, there's 4 throughout the year. Also, let's see here. What order am I going to? I'll just follow my list. So advisor emails. You may get emails from your child's advisor if there's something kind of specific that happened or that they need to be aware of. Someone got scratched on the arm by a branch. We put a Band-Aid on it. Just so you know, let me know if you have any questions, something like that. And our nurse will follow up or whatever it may be. But advisors will be in contact with you as needed. And but we also have a kind of a touch point called up forms. That document on the left is an example of an up form. It's hard to read on this screen, at least for me. What an up form is, it's a form that we will send to you every 3 weeks or so. And it stands for update and plan. Here's the way up forms work. So periodically, every 3 weeks or so, it's kind of like, I guess, a progress report would be kind of language that you could use to describe it. But the way we do this is every time we fill out an up form, each teacher will list your child's current grade in the class, if they have any missing or not yet assignments. And a not yet is an assignment that the child is done, but it's just kind of not done. It's not meeting the expectations yet. And then this child will kind of go back with our kind of feedback and then finish it. So it's the current grade, the number of missings or not yet, and then a quick comment for each class from each teacher about how your child is doing in the class. On the up form is also the goal, your child's goal for the trimester, a note from the advisor, and any student notes from your child. What we do with these is when they are filled out, the advisor will meet with, so for example, I have a homeroom. So I will meet with each of my advisees and one-on-one and go through this entire form with them. So I say, okay, in English class, looks like you have a C+, you have 0 missings, you just turned this in, you're doing a great job following up with this teacher, etc. And we just kind of go through the whole form. Looks like you need to work on this in English class, awesome job in your history class, whatever it may be. Go through the whole form. And then we come up with whatever plans or follow-up action needs to happen from that form. We may add things to the homework agenda, whatever plans we have from that. And then the form is sent home to you. So when you get an up form, it's usually shared via Google. So if you see something called up form via Google, that's it. The first one will be coming on October 1st, not this coming Friday, but the following Friday. You'll get this kind of basically little kind of note and feedback from each of your child's teachers about how things are going. And your child will have already previewed that with their advisor. And so they have seen everything. They know everything that's on it. And so you are totally encouraged and welcome to talk about it with your child. You don't need to kind of make the plan with them, but you can talk to them about what is the plan if a plan is needed, because your child's advisor will have kind of gone through it with them and talked about what they need to do, or maybe they're doing great and they just need to kind of keep working hard and stick with what they're doing, and they're doing great. So those are up forms. Stay tuned. You will get one next Friday. Every now and then, a student just kind of gets in a hole and they kind of get behind for whatever reason. We do offer Friday work sessions for students that are behind on work. We quite often are available on Friday, even though Fridays are a half day. We will ask a student to stay. Why don't you just come? Actually, you are you were absent for a few days and then you missed and you just had a bad day, missed some assignments, why don't you stay this Friday afternoon? We will help you get caught back up, and then you'll just kind of start fresh moving forward. If your child is asked to stay for a Friday work session, of course, if you can't make it transportation-wise, understandable, but they tend to, again, be a time where students don't quite want to do it, but end up leaving feeling relieved and caught up and in a good spot, and quite often actually finish their weekend homework as well. So that's something that you will possibly hear from an advisor, but quite possibly not as well. Whoops, wrong slide. Okay. And so things to look out in your email inbox. Up forms, as I mentioned, advisor and or a message from our counselor, just emails, conference invitations. We may kind of periodically send, just kind of Kate or I or Heather may send you an email just kind of saying this is happening or just to be aware. And French may send you an email, particularly about attendance or conferences as well. And then there is also a regular email sent out on Thursdays. That's an all-school email called the Thursday Update. And that is just a vast source of information about what's going on at Carroll. It has announcements, calendars, links to all different types of things. And if you are kind of wondering something or unsure about something, and it's just kind of school information like when is winter break or whatever it may be that you're curious about, the Thursday Update is a great spot to kind of find information. Our website as well, of course, has information on it too, but Thursday Updates are have a bunch of information. I think that is it. It's that's the end of my kind of, I had a beautiful picture of the Wayland campus. And anyways, I think it didn't go through on the slide. But anyways, thank you for coming.